Okay, everyone, we're going to get started. Thank you so much for joining us today for the webinar, Runaway Prevention, How Runaway and Homeless Youth Providers Tackle Prevention. I'm joined here by some really great panelists that we'll introduce shortly. And also, I'm Rachel Reynolds. I'm the Outreach and Prevention Specialist at the National Runaway Safeline. So here are some items that you'll be able to walk away with from the end of this webinar. One is to describe the importance of preventing runaway and homeless episodes. The second is to identify strategies and resources to increase runaway prevention and awareness. And lastly, to integrate runaway prevention approaches in your programs and communities. So before we hear from the panelists and the unique and different ways that they serve runaway and homeless youth, I first wanted to talk about the magnitude of this issue and kind of shine a little light on that. This is data from Chapin Hall, and it shows that 1 in 30 adolescents and 1 in 10 young adults endure some form of homelessness in a year. So this can include running away, being kicked out, and couch surfing. And these statistics are just a glimpse of what highlights why runaway prevention is so important to us here. So today we are joined by TNOYS, YouthCare, Lighthouse, and then Bellefaire. I will read everyone's bios as we begin, but these panelists will explore the services that their organization provide to runaway and homeless youth, the unique strategies that they have to promote awareness on RHY issues, and how they have incorporated these prevention efforts into their programming. And then lastly, lessons that they have learned and tips on implementing similar strategies. So first, I'm going to share a little bit about NRS. We're the federally designated national communication system for runaway and homeless youth. And our mission is to keep America's runaway, homeless, and at-risk youth safe and off the streets. Each year, we make approximately 100,000 connections with youth and families through our hotline, online, and offline resources, which I'll get to on the next slide. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about some of our prevention efforts. So here at NRS, we're in a really unique position to tackle runaway prevention because over 50% of the youth that are contacting us are still at home and not yet off the street. And through this, we offer trauma-informed solution-focused crisis interventions through our hotline, which is 1-800-RUNAWAY, and also online resources, which is 1-800-RUNAWAY.org. So we get contacts from service providers, youth, and parents, and we provide support, information, and we also have a really large database that we're constantly updating in order to provide referrals to the youth who contact us. So currently we have over 6,500 sources in our database, and some examples of these are housing, substance abuse, treatment, and then counseling. And then also through our hotline, we provide conference call and messaging services as an option for communication for youth. The messaging service can be used as a first line of communication between youth and their families. So youth can call us and leave a message for their parents or guardian and say something like, "Hi, Mom and Dad, I'm safe, just want to let you know," and we can relay that message to their parent or guardian. And conference calls are another service that we provide, and they're youth initiated, and there's really two things that they can be used for. So one that we often see is to help link the youth to services that they may be interested in and could use. So this is really a way to advocate for the youth and empower them. So for example, if they're interested and need shelter for the night, we can help them contact a shelter with them and make sure they meet those requirements. And the second use of a conference call is where NRS can mediate a conversation with the youth and their legal guardian. And this can be that the youth has already left home and they need to want help contacting the guardian, or that they're still at home and they just need someone to help mediate that conversation. We also offer a home free program, which is in partnership with Greyhound, and it grants free bus tickets to youth that have left home but wish to return. And then finally, like I mentioned, we have our 1-800-runaway.org site, and through this we have live chat, crisis form, and email, and then we also have promotional materials and free educational resources that can be found on that website as well. So every November, which is soon approaching, we help spearhead the campaign National Runaway Prevention Month, or NRPM. And the goals of NRPM are really twofold. One is to raise awareness of the runaway and homeless youth crisis and the issues that these young people face. And the second is to educate the public about solutions and the role that they can play in runaway prevention and ending youth homelessness. So on the right, you can see our the NRPM logo. The logo and other materials that I'll just briefly go over can be found on our website. And also at the end of this presentation, I'll send a follow-up email so you can easily access that. So the theme of National Runaway Prevention Month is Shine a Light. And this is really to shine a light on the issues that runaway and homeless youth face, but then also really highlight and shine a light on those important resources that are available for youth in crisis, and let them know what's out there and how we can all come together and kind of rally together and show America's runaway and homeless youth that they're not alone. So the next two slides are national events, and like I said in the follow-up email, I'll just provide a link so you can see these event dates if you don't get them all down. But we kick off NRPM with on November 1st, which is Profile Picture Day. You can add a Shine a Light filter to your Facebook profile so you can show your support for runaway and homeless youth for the entire month of November. And then that next week, November 4th through 8th, is Education Week. And during the week, we'll be sharing information about RHY issues, for example, providing current statistics, exploring what RHY means and what it can look like for different individuals, and also discuss the challenges of navigating different systems. And we're going to be doing this online through our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And then during that week is also Twitter chat on Tuesday, November 5th. And this is where different organizations and individuals, we can come together and engage in a discussion about runaway and homeless youth. And there's written instructions on how to join on our website. You can also follow along using the hashtag NRPM chat. And then the last 2 days, on November 12th is Wear Green Day. So this is really just an easy and fun way to get involved in NRPM and raise awareness. And for added impact, we ask that individuals and groups can post their pictures on social media. And then finally is the Light the Night community events, and this is Tuesday, November 19th. And this is where youth service agencies, community groups, and individuals across the country will be hosting events to shine a light on the issues and show solidarity with youth in crisis. So in the past, we've seen events using flashlights, kind of highlighting the Shine a Light theme, candles, and other forms of light, or hosting events such as resource fairs, sleep outs, and things like that. And then finally, we also have the Let's Talk Runaway Prevention curriculum. The goals are to help youth build different life skills and educate them about the alternatives to running away. And it also encourages youth to seek help from a trusted adult and increase knowledge about runaway resources and prevention. So it's free and it can be downloaded on our website, and it's also available in both Spanish and English. There are 14 different modules, and these topics really range from a lot of different things. So from communication and listening, stress reduction, to anger management, just to name a few. And each module has a different, consists of different activities that you can do in a classroom, and we see this being done in a lot of different settings. So now we're going to get to the panelists. We're joined here by Christine and Justin from TNOYS. Christine has served as the executive director of TNOYS since 2012 and has been involved with the organization since 2008. In her role, she serves as a resource for policymakers, funders, service providers, and others looking to make informed investments to strengthen services for youth and young adults. Prior to becoming an executive director of TNOYS, Christine worked as a senior research associate at the LBJ School Center for Health and Social Policy, where she managed evaluations of several innovative state-funded initiatives to promote the well-being of Texas children and their families. Christine has led an array of consulting projects for youth service agencies and authored numerous publications relevant to youth services and child well-being. Christine received her master's degree from the LBJ School of Public Affairs at the University of Texas at Austin, and her bachelor's degree in history and women's studies from Texas A&M University. So welcome, Christine. We're also joined here with her coworker, Justin Hayward, who is a young adult advocate whose friends call him Prince. His positive and negative experiences in CPS and being homeless have shaped who he is today. Currently, Justin is an active leader in the Houston area and a member of 2 other advocacy youth boards, and these include TNOYS and also the National Youth Forum on Homelessness. He feels blessed to overcome the statistics of being an African-American male in and out of various systems as youth, and is a champion for change on all levels for the next generation. So thank you both for joining us, and I'll let you take over.
You guys hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Awesome. Okay, this is Christine. Thank you for the introduction. I really appreciate it. I don't think Justin or Prince is on. He's traveling today and also having some tech issues. But if he is on, he'll jump in.
Okay, thanks so much.
Oh, you're welcome. And I'm sorry about the inconvenience. So we lost our IT person, and so I'm the IT person, and I'm clearly not very good at it.
No, not a problem. You made it. So thank you for joining, everyone.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. Would you guys be able to scroll to the next slide? So Texas Network of Youth Services, we go by TNOYS for short. We are a statewide membership organization in Texas that works specifically with the organizations that serve young people who are homeless, who are system involved, or who are at risk. Our mission is to strengthen services and support for Texas youth and families to help them overcome challenges and achieve healthy development. On this slide, you'll also see our vision statement and our tagline, which says their future is our business. A big part of our work is about collaborating with young people themselves. And so I'm disappointed that Prince isn't able to be on the webinar with me today, but he actually is out of town as well doing some other training programs. Can you guys move to the next slide? Thank you. So we were asked to speak on this webinar about a recent initiative we've been working on around runaway prevention. And it's called Building Alliances with Youth to Prevent Runaway and Other Challenging Behaviors. So about a year ago, our child welfare agency was getting a lot of negative press about young people running from foster care. It's been somewhat of a crisis, and as we really thought about it, we realized that our network had a lot to offer. When we think about youth who are systems involved, or the programs and systems that serve them, oftentimes youth are required to be in those placements or those programs. Whereas when we think about programs that serve homeless young people, the young people are often there by choice. And so for that reason, those providers have really had to learn how to build relationships with young people so that young people will choose to be there and to receive that help. And it's a little bit different from how the programs that are part of larger systems where youth are required to be placed, how they sometimes work. And so we were thinking about this issue of youth running from foster care, and we felt like there's a lot of expertise in the community of providers that serve homeless youth, as well as expertise among youth themselves about how to tackle this issue. And so we partnered with our child welfare agency to coordinate 3 events, and they've been such a big hit that we'll be offering more. But basically, we have a collaboration of a provider who is an expert at serving homeless young people, as well as 2 young adults who have experience with running away from foster care themselves, who offer the training. And they started out training CPS caseworkers and foster care providers. And these have been such a big hit that our state juvenile justice agency has begun sending its staff. And there have been various other stakeholders there as well. The training is very much youth-led, and it focuses on why do youth run, and then how do you build a relationship with a young person so that they don't feel like running is their best option. Are there any, do you guys want to do questions now or save them for the end?
I think we're going to just save them for the end.
Okay, awesome. So the training really focuses on youth voice, building alliances with youth, youth-adult partnership. The idea being that if you stop engaging in power struggles with youth and you start facilitating opportunities for young people to have a voice in their own lives, that they are not going to feel the need to leave the placement. So can we go to the next slide? So there's other work that TNOYS does in the area of runaway prevention and awareness. So TNOYS has been instrumental in originally creating and then now supporting what's called the Services to At-Risk Youth, or STAR program here in Texas. So STAR is funded out of our child welfare agency. It's basically a family crisis intervention program that covers all 254 of Texas's counties. The state contracts with a different provider to provide services in each county or in a region of multiple counties. And those services can include counseling for families, parenting skills development, anger management for youth, as well as respite care when it's needed in emergency situations. So the idea is that it's not uncommon for a family to have a crisis. For example, to have a situation where a parent feels like they're at the end of their rope and they can no longer handle their teenager, they just don't know what to do anymore. And so this is a program that can step in and provide support for those families to prevent system involvement. And that program gets referrals from law enforcement, from public school districts. It also takes self-referrals. And occasionally it gets referrals from the child welfare agency, because sometimes CPS gets calls from people saying, you know, I'm done with my teen, come pick them up. And they'll say, well, that's not really how it works, but we can refer you to the STAR program for services. We've also been working quite a bit to facilitate some cross-systems collaboration in Texas at the state level. And so really looking at, well, what's happening across the state when runaways are identified. Oftentimes, it's law enforcement that identifies runaways, and depending on the jurisdiction, that might be handled in different ways. In some communities, there is a shelter, and so the police will take the runaway to the shelter, and then the shelter can determine whether they can work with the family for the youth to go back home, or whether some other sort of intervention is needed. But in other areas, especially with Texas being so big, there aren't really a lot of resources. And so the situation is a little bit more challenging. The last thing at the bottom here is we've been working on capacity building to prevent and respond to the commercial sexual exploitation of children. Really working with providers to build out services ranging from drop-in center to emergency shelter to meet the needs of these young people, and then also working with providers to prevent young people from being trafficked, which we know is often heavily tied to runaway behavior.
Great. Thank you so much, Christine.
Thank you.
Yeah, so yeah, like I said, I'm sure there'll be some great questions at the end. So we'll just save those and go over at the end. But next we will turn to Lighthouse with David Durr. So after 30 years of managing local for-profit businesses, David came to Lighthouse Youth Services in 2009. In the last decade, he has worked in independent living, mentoring, foster care, and becoming the director of shelter services, serving both youth 10 to 17 years old, as well as young adults 18 to 24 years old. David has a BA in organizational leadership, a Master of Social Work from Northern Kentucky University, and is a licensed independent social work supervisor in Ohio. He serves as a RITEC advisory board member and works directly with local community leaders to support local homeless populations. So welcome, David, and thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Lighthouse's mission is to empower young people and families to succeed through a continuum of care that promotes healing and growth. One of the ways we do that is through our 3 systems within our facilities. We have a juvenile justice system, which operates our group homes, our boys camp, mental health services, and our community school. We have our homeless youth services, which operates our Meekum House, which is our 10 to 17-year-old shelter. The Shakely Center for Youth, which is our 18 to 24-year-old shelter. Our Keys, which is our youth homeless initiative. And our youth housing program, which has rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, and independent living. Our clinical services divisions have wraparound services, integrated access, provide therapy and case management, and school-based services, as well as foster care and adoption. One of the ways we work to prevent homelessness is that we integrate all 3 of these streams together to wrap them around the youth. When we receive a crisis call from a parent in the shelter saying, I'm at my wit's end, I don't know what to do, we can refer them to integrated access, and they can walk in that afternoon and have a diagnostic assessment, begin therapy and treatment. So we prevent having that episode of homelessness by being able to get those services in place quickly. We also work with school-based services and other programs. The Keys to Ending Youth Homelessness grant is the YHDP grant. One of the unique features of that grant is that it provides prevention funding. As you know, HUD does not define homelessness. Couch surfing is not homeless, but we can use those funds to prevent youth from being homeless that are currently couch surfing. So when a youth presents at shelter, we have a series of diversion sheets that we go through to establish whether that person has other opportunities and other places that they could live or stay. And we now, with this grant, have some funding to help that aunt or that uncle keep them in their home and provide funding for additional food or whatever is needed so that we can immediately put services in place and prevent them from living in a place that's not meant for human habitation. That program collaborates with Youth Voice, Legal Aid, Children's Services, and public schools. So Legal Aid, for example, gets involved if they have evictions or they have records that need to be expunged, and works with the youth to help that get cleared up so that that doesn't prevent them or make them homeless. We work with our public school systems. We're embedded in many schools, And the other schools, we work directly with the counselors in those schools to identify youth. We have multiple shelter programs that we work with. So we have family shelters, individual shelters, older shelters. One shelter takes pets for us. So we also work within a COC, and we have a youth dedicated service team. Once a youth is identified in the homeless continuum, the youth dedicated service team will follow them for up to 2 years, even after their homelessness is resolved, to ensure that they don't have a repeat episode of homelessness. We have established a partnership with our public library, and the library staff are really good with us. We know that homeless people hang out in libraries. They need the Wi-Fi. They need a warm place to stay. We work directly with them. They know where we are and how to contact us. And they also have been trained now how to help identify youth that could be potentially homeless. So they're working directly with us to identify those youth that might be around all the time that need assistance. They also provide a space for us to have awareness classes and groups. And for a long time, we held our youth voice group at the libraries. They support our outreach teams and allow us to set up tables and stay out front and work directly with us to help identify those youth that are homeless. Next slide. Okay. School-based partnerships. We're embedded with counselors in 17 local schools. So Lighthouse counselors are in those schools. We're also connected with about 14 other schools that we work with directly, where I have contacted them and worked with their counselors, and we know that they are sometimes the first people to identify a potentially homeless youth, because the youth will go there for food, and the youth will go there to clean up in the bathrooms, even if they're not attending classes. We meet with our counselors, and they hand out stuff to all the youth for us. They hand out Safe Place products. They hand out contact cards, and they work specifically with us and the program to help youth that are potentially homeless when they identify them. Often they're the first. We also work with Project Connect, which is an embedded representative for our local public school system, and they're here. So they directly identify schools that we do not have counselors in. They identify those youth, and they also get the youth quickly back into schools to provide supplies and other things. Our Upspring program is everybody who's not directly within our local public school district, and they will support the homeless there. The Upspring program also supports our aftercare program, so youth can come in when they're in aftercare once a week and participate in Upspring programs and get gift cards and rewards and things to encourage them to continue to stay connected with us. We work directly with the schools as far as teaching trauma-informed care. We've worked with the schools so that the teachers understand trauma-informed care and that they understand what youth could be going through. We work with our public health educator systems in the Hamilton County system. They are working on building communities, and we use that form through a program called We Thrive. So they'll go to a small local community and be working with community leaders in the We Thrive program to help them expand and make positive changes within their small communities. Safe Place and Lighthouse becomes a part of that. So that is a venue by which we can go in and connect with all of those business leaders and make them aware of youth homelessness and how we can help. Next slide. We participate in multiple parades. So we know that LGBTQ individuals are overrepresented in the homeless population, but sometimes underrepresented in shelters. We want to work with that community. We want to be a part of that community. We're heavily invested in that community, and we participate in the Pride Parade because we support those individuals. We work the Black Family Reunion and their parade. We know that 80% of the youth coming into the homeless shelter identify as African American, and we want to be part of that community. We want to be present for them so that when they do need help, we're there. And this year, for the first time, I believe we'll be working in the Blink Parade, which is a light up nighttime parade and a weekend and week-long celebration within the city just to expand so that everybody knows what Lighthouse does and that we're the number they call immediately when they need help. Once we have people that show interest, we have an Inside Lighthouse program, which our development coordinators run, and they go through each Lighthouse program and invite the public in to understand what the program is, understand how they can help. For example, they've come to the youth shelter so that they know that we see over 500 youth a year and what the average age is and how they can be involved in resolving youth homelessness on an individual level as well as a national level. We work locally. When we opened our new shelters, we are unique in Cincinnati in that we have 4 homeless shelters within a 5-block radius. And we work very closely with the 2 communities to make sure that that's a positive experience for those communities so that they understand that we're not just having a place for homeless youth in their backyard, but them as a community are part of resolving youth homelessness. Help them reduce fear. We work on positive programs. We have a fall fair every year and invite people in with a DJ and demonstrate what services we offer and offer services and help identify youth. We attend block parties to meet the neighbors and work directly with the neighbors so that we can work together when they find someone in the community that needs assistance. Next. Next slide.
That was the, I think, final slide. I think,
Yay.
yeah. So, thank you so much, David. And thanks for sharing all the great work you're doing. So now we're going to hear from Melinda Giovengo from YouthCare. Dr. Melinda Giovengo has became the Executive Director of YouthCare in November 2006. She rejoined the agency where she first served as a case manager and also program manager for more than 20 years. She has 30 years of experience in developing and implementing re-engagement programs for out-of-school and homeless youth. Melinda holds an MA in clinical psychology and a PhD in educational psychology and is published on issues regarding youth homelessness and the impact of learning disabilities in hard-to-serve populations. Melinda speaks locally and nationally on youth homelessness, adolescent mental health issues, and child sexual exploitation. She is the board chair of the National Network for Youth and a board member of the National Youth Employment Coalition. In her free time, Melinda enjoys traveling, spending time with her wife and son, and making custom-fit sweaters for her tiny Chihuahua Pepe. So thank you, Melinda.
Hi, everybody. How are you? YouthCare is the largest provider of youth homeless services in the Northwest area. And we have a full kind of continuum of care with prevention, engagement, shelter and housing, both transitional, emergency, permanent supportive, and rapid rehousing. And really spend a lot of time focusing on employment, education. We also run the local trafficking collaboration called the Bridge Collaborative, where we work with all the local advocates to provide services to young people who have experienced sexual exploitation. We serve about 1,500 young people a year and have about 220 units of housing that we coordinate every night. Next. So when we look at our prevention and awareness around homelessness, we actually have kind of 2 major prevention interventions. And I will say that I think that while we don't do necessarily primary prevention, meaning in the homes, we do run 2 programs that hit that moment, what I call the thin red line between when a young person is struggling to be at home or the family is struggling to stay housed and when they're on the streets. Our Bridge Collaborative focuses on the case management support and resources, and our housing stabilization really interjects where there's an unexpected financial setback that will lead young people and families into homelessness. So we provide the actual financial resources, sort of like a diversion program, and community-based case management to youth and families at imminent risk of homelessness. We do this inside of our schools, our alternative school called Interagency Academy, which has about 900 students, of which 67% report being unstably housed. And we do it in our juvenile justice system so that young people are not exited to homelessness. So the idea is to try to get there before they hit the streets and before they are any more trauma loading can happen when they hit the when they lose their housing. Our big objective is to keep families housed where we can and where they're safe for young people to stay at, and to ensure that no young person exit any institution or housing program back into homelessness. Next. We are the local coordinator of the Safe Place program, which I think everyone knows is a 24/7 program that connects young people, runaway and homeless youth, to services, either by reuniting them home or getting them into an emergency shelter program. We work with 2 other local agencies that cover a large geographic area. Friends of Youth over on the east side of King County, which is one of the largest counties in the country, and Nexus Services, which is down in the south part of our county. The idea is that we are able to reach young people within 45 minutes of a time that we receive a call by deploying someone from the local resource out there. We have a 24/7 on-call hotline and access to transportation. Our safe places are, we have about 1,500 places designated, plus all of our libraries, YMCAs, public health centers, and all of our King County Metro Transit buses. So they were our very first partner in Safe Place, meaning that if a young person gets on a bus and needs help, all they have to do is let the bus driver know. The bus driver calls dispatch. We meet the young person at a bus stop, a main hub, and intercept that young person before they end up in a situation where they could be vulnerable to trafficking and or any kind of street violence. So we have this whole intercept program that really stops those young people from hopefully getting engaged with the people waiting to exploit and victimize them at these kind of main connections. We also run a local youth and family connection program, which is a partnership. It is funded through our Office of Homeless Youth and through local private funding that works with families to keep them engaged or to get them back home. So a lot of times when young people show up, one of the things, of course, you all know, is that, you know, their family's broken, and where we can, we actually deploy as family specialists, especially with our minor young people and any minor that comes into our drop-in centers. We actually assign them to this under 18 case manager that works then on reuniting the family, if it our foster family, if that is at all safe or possible, and otherwise works specifically with getting that young person into the child welfare system or into some kind of safe housing very quickly. So it's a more immediate kind of access to case management and family consultation, so that we can see as quickly as possible if we can get that young person out of our shelters and off of the streets and back home where it's safe. Our YFCN case managers have access to a discretionary dollars that can help both families, if the struggle is that the family is about to lose housing, but anything that the family might need to create a more stable environment for a young person to return to and prevent them from running away again and or the family from ending up homeless. Next. Like I said, we are based in the Seattle Public Schools. This is, again, a flexible kind of diversion funding that helps these young people in school that are unstably housed figure out how to stay housed. And that is primarily through helping their family with rental assistance, lights, any kind of appointments that they may need that would help them secure and stabilize their housing situation. And again, we have two specialized case managers that work inside of our juvenile rehab, which is our state system, and our local county detention centers that ensure that any young person leaving detention can find a stable place to live. This is done, again, while the definition doesn't necessarily cover these young people under HUD, we do this mainly through local resources that allow us, and hopefully through the new Family First prevention work, that will intercept young people prior to their ever being exited to the streets, which is we found to be the most kind of critical intervention spot to preserve families and or to keep that young person from re-engaging in both criminal activity or dropping out of school. We think that the more we can keep young people engaged with education and employment or re-engage with education and employment, the more likely we are to keep them out of homelessness on the long term. So we work very diligently and have a very robust employment and education engagement work throughout our system to get young people back on those trajectories where they can feel more stable and that they can, be stable in housing and in kind of moving forward with their lives. Next.
Yeah, so thank you so much.
That's it. Okay. I do want to say one thing is that the overall package of prevention services for us, again, is not going into the family. We can't prevent every child from leaving or run away, but as soon as we detect a family on a critical edge, our objective is to get in there and see either stabilize the family or stabilize the young person, whatever is the most appropriate for the situation.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much to Melinda and YouthCare for joining us today. Now we're going to hear from our last panelist, Karen McHenry with Bellefaire JCB. Karen serves as the program manager of Bellefaire's homeless youth programs. She joined in 1987, and her role was a child care worker where she developed clinical knowledge and experience supporting high-risk youth and their families. Karen's been recognized for her outstanding assistance to the FBI in connection with its investigative efforts, is the recipient of the Child Care Worker of the Year Award and the National Direct Service Worker Merit Award from Child Welfare League of America. She has a bachelor's degree from Kent State University and a master's degree in Social Service Administration from the Mandel School of Applied Social Sciences. She is a certified chemical dependency counselor with clinical supervisor endorsement, a licensed independent social worker, and also has her fire safety educator license. So thank you so much, Karen, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Bellefaire is a very encompassing child welfare agency that has been around for more than 150 years. And one of the wonderful things about Bellefaire is that we have this huge continuum of care. So whatever the prevention is that's needed, we can link the teen and the family so they can experience success. We have very trained staff and a team of workers that are out on the street doing prevention work all the time. We have a 24/7 hotline through our homeless and missing youth program, which is another avenue that teens call asking for help. We also have the Safe Place program in all of our libraries and on all of our rapids and buses every day. And that is another avenue of prevention. So a teen needing assistance can reach out to a librarian. We see lots of our teens in libraries, in schools every day, trying to overcome barriers and get to achieving their goals. One of the things that Bellefaire does very well is in-home family therapy, and we respond by doing a great deal of family reunification, breaking down barriers to help teens and families experience success and stability. Like many of the other agencies and programs said earlier, prevention is the key, because we know once a teen is out on the streets, their risk factors are going up, their chances of becoming victims of sex trafficking are going up by the minute. So we get moms, we get legal guardians, we get foster parents, law enforcement, FBI calling the hotline, identifying these red flags that we are constantly in the community training people so they're aware of what the warning signs are. So whether you're a worker at a food bank or a librarian or the school attendance officer, you're aware of those warning signs in our community that you might need support and help. And our goal is to train everybody so that they can have a trauma-informed response, and Bellefaire can wrap services around this teen and family so they don't experience homelessness or don't go missing. We have more than 180 children missing under the age of 18 right now as of today in Cleveland. And so we are continually working to try to bring in those young adults and teenagers as well. So prevention really is so crucial for the safety of all of our teens. Next. I covered some of this, but it's just really important to know that one of the things that we're constantly bringing to our families is help and hope. That is really the messaging that we're trying to relay to people all the time, whether they're calling the hotline saying, I don't have any way to get to work, or my mom says she's going to kick me out, or I'm already kicked out. Trying to support that teen, helping them with what their options are, and empowering them. Empowerment is such a key to their success. You know, what could your next steps be? What are you willing to do? Where are they in the cycle of change? Next. So two other areas that we wanted to highlight in prevention is one of our social advocacy for youth program called the SAY model. And that's based in schools, and the counselors really help assess risky behavior, empowering, again, the teens to make healthy choices. And really, we work very, very closely with these schools, bringing in their family, looking at options, utilizing our host homes if needed, and wrapping services around these teens in the community. So making sure that we do a warm transfer. So if someone has experienced a sexual assault, physically taking them to the rape crisis appointment, physically helping them get and supporting them through the process of a visit with a sexual assault nurse examiner in emergency room. So really being there for these teens and families when they are in their most vulnerable and crisis time of a situation. And then, as I said, we have a 24/7 hotline that we get calls from just about everybody, and teens, you know, pass the number on to other teens. And I think that's why Bellefaire's hotline is so successful, is that we also have a Facebook and an Instagram page, and we're constantly posting events, posting, you know, where there's free produce, might be a job fair, some motivational tips for the day. So making sure that the teens know that the hotline's out there and that if they need help to call, and they also use it as kind of a mechanism to check in to say, you know, how that job fair went or how they're doing with achieving their goals. And they call if they come across barriers, and we try to help them overcome those. Next. So one of the things in Cleveland that happened was that, I can't believe it was so long ago, but it was about 7 years ago, there were 3 girls that had been missing for over 10 years, and they were held captive in a home in Cleveland. And when these girls, or young women at the time, when they escaped, we were able to see that the community, Cleveland, had a lot more empathy for kids that were homeless or missing. Not so much the running away. It was kind of seen as more delinquency. They're just doing what they want to do. So it made Bellefaire and the community come together and increase awareness. And we made 2 different videos that we've shared the links. So we would really encourage you to take a minute and look at these links. They're great opportunities and conversations that you can have with young adults, you can have with families, you can share on your social media. So the Take a Closer Look campaign, we really wanted the community to see that many of these missing or unstably housed teenagers are right here in front of us, and that they're invisible to most people. And how can you engage them? How can you connect with them? How can you make sure that they're okay? Because many of these teens are not like walking into their school saying like, I need help, I didn't have a place to stay, I slept on the bus last night. They're trying to blend in. So we really took this tragedy and used it as a situation where we empowered our community to be more supportive, to be more aware. And so we've seen a lot of success with this campaign. Our goal when we did the second public service announcement was to have it be viewed more than 1.5 million times, because that's how many missing kids there are in the U.S. And it ended up that as of the last time I checked, we're over 3.5 million. And it's really continues to gain momentum. And we had these mannequins that we made that were really, we call them somebodies, that were wearing hoodies, and they explain different messages why teens end up out on the street. One, for example, said, "My dad kicked me out because I'm gay." The other one said, "I'm too afraid to go home. I'm scared of my mom's boyfriend." So all these different messages to also educate the community. So the second video really is more of a call for action, and that's been very, very powerful, empowering the community to take a closer look, be supportive, have an open eye out for these kids, and let them know that there's resources such as Bellefaire in the community, that we're here to help, we're here to provide hope. And it's just been very empowering at many levels for the community, as well as for our vulnerable teens, to say, wow, other people realize that we might need help and we could ask for help, and they do see us. They do know that we exist. And so it was a real safe way to try to connect and engage with these teens. The next one. So yes, obviously November is our Prevention Awareness Month, and so we do all sorts of different projects. But one of the ones that's very exciting is that in downtown Cleveland, there's a very large building called Terminal Tower, and they actually turn it green for us for one night in November to increase awareness. And, you know, we put that out on social media. The teens love it. It really just shines and shows the light and the need for these kids that they're missing. You know, if you see me, ask me if I need help. And it's really just a really cool event that the Terminal Tower in downtown Cleveland has been committed to doing for us for years. We also have green light bulbs, and so we get different neighborhoods, particularly where somebody's missing, and we get them to put the green light bulb in their porch light. And so that's also another way to increase awareness and generate conversation and let the teens that are missing or unstably housed or needing help to know that there is a service and that there is Bellefaire that's there for them waiting to respond. So I think that's it. Do I have one more?
Yeah, no, that is it. Yeah, thank you so much, Karen.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, and just for everyone listening, those two links to the videos you sent, they're awesome. So I do encourage everyone to watch them, and we'll also link them in the follow-up email at the end of the presentation for anyone to see. So before we take questions, I just wanted to take a quick second to thank you so much to the 4 organizations that participated in this webinar. It's really great hearing all throughout different communities what you're doing in terms of prevention and all the unique things you have going on. So thank you so much. So yes, now we will be fielding some questions. I'm joined here with my coworker, Jamin Draves, who anyone can type questions into the chat box or the questions tab on the webinar. Also, if you want to be unmuted, just raise your hand and you can ask questions that way. And just a reminder to everyone, this is being recorded, just to let you know. So we'll just take a few minutes and answer all your questions. Okay, it looks like someone has their hand raised. Let me unmute you real quick. So Achilles Stewart, it looks like you're self-muted. So you can either unmute yourself or just type in the question box.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, great. So my name is Akila Stewart. I'm the program manager of the Youth Crisis Center in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I can't remember who it was, but someone mentioned that they had a 24-hour crisis line where clients or families or anyone can call in for help in regards to a youth that's in crisis and needed shelter. And we have the same thing at our crisis center. And I was wondering, how do you all track, if you even track it, how do you all track those crisis calls? And like, if you have to report them, how do you do that? Because we're having some trouble with that. So we'd love to know what you all are doing.
This Melinda from YouthCare, and I think that question is probably directed at me about our 24-hour Safe Place line. We have a 24-hour person that actually answers the Safe Place line, so they take all the calls and referrals. And obviously, if there is reported abuse or neglect, we actually do report that to Child Protective Services. The Safe Place program has its own tracking kind of requirements that we follow. And then in our runaway and homeless youth shelter, which also has a 24-hour line, we log every call that comes in that's an emergency, and then basically say what the outcome of that was, whether we placed or referred or just answered their question there. So it's not terribly sophisticated, but we try to keep track of everyone that's calling in and receive services.
Do you guys write those numbers or those calls down, or do you have a system that you put them into to count all, like, because we have to report how many calls we get per month, per 6 months, per year. And our process is writing them down on a call log, and then our third shift person will put them into our system. But sometimes we lose calls because not all calls are logged.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much where we are too.
Okay.
Sorry. Haven't figured that out yet.
This is Karen from Bellefaire, and we also, like Melinda, do a very similar, document according to Safe Place, document according to what we need to do for the grants, and just keeping track of it as best as we can. So we know it's just part of one of the many responsibilities that we have in documenting, so we know what's happening and looking at different trends when people tend to call and things like that. So it can be helpful data, obviously, to have, too, when you're strategizing your programs and your street outreach, seeing if there's different trends or new locations where teens or young adults are hanging out.
Right. I was just hoping maybe someone had a more sophisticated way of doing it, because I feel like we're so 1980s with writing it down. So just trying to see if there was another program that we can maybe look into or anything like that.
If you find one, let us know at Bellefaire.
I sure will.
Because we do the same thing. We document it and then we put it in an Excel chart so we can pull the numbers out for the reporting period.
Yeah, please share if you find.
You guys share with me as well.
Got it.
Great, thank you so much. So we have another question too. We're just pulling it up for a quick second.
Yeah, are there any new trends or challenges that are important to speak to?
I think in terms of probably prevention in runaway and homeless youth.
Yes.
One of the things we've seen one of the things in Cleveland that we've tried to do for prevention is to empower parents and educate them around different apps and social media that, it's not a real good excuse to just say, like, I don't know how to do that. Making sure that they're empowered and using it as an opportunity to connect with their teens and see that, you shouldn't have two calculators. One of them is another way to get into the dark web, making sure that they use this opportunity of the social media to learn from their teens and see, what are their names when they're on social media. So if something should happen, they have a better gauge on what's going on with their teen and their level of vulnerability.
And this is Melinda. I would say that I think that there is a growing concern about young people exiting public systems into homelessness. And so for us, a big emphasis and growing trend is to be the kind of link right in those systems so that young people don't exit into homelessness. So it's sort of forecasting, imminent homelessness for kids exiting detention and foster care and high school dropouts, those kind of things, so that we can be on the ground where it starts.
And since this is David in Cincinnati, two of the trends that we face, well, one, Cincinnati is 100 years behind the rest of the world, but we now have 3% of our population, which is Guatemalan, which does not communicate in English, and Spanish is a second language. The second trend that we see is we're right next to a state line, right between the states of Kentucky, Indiana, and Ohio, and services across state lines are challenging, and we're getting more and more youth present at our homeless shelters that are from multiple states away.
Great. Thank you all for answering that question. We also have a question from Linda, and she was wondering if some of you guys could kind of speak to the process and licensing process for people who are willing to have safe homes or safe places in the communities.
This is Karen from Cleveland and Bellefaire. There is a lot of information right on the National Safe Place website, and you can just really contact anyone from their organization and they will help you start the process. It is very helpful. They just have a wealth of information on their website. So I would really recommend going to the National Safe Place website, and if you need any help, whoever is looking for this, to start a safe place model or the training piece, don't hesitate to call us at Bellefaire, and we'd be glad to collaborate.
Yeah, thank you so much. Definitely checking out that website. It's very user-friendly, and the folks over there are super helpful. So thank you for that. We're just gonna wait for a few more questions as they roll in, but I don't think will be too much longer. Yeah. So I do see some of the questions being asked, pretty specific questions for different agencies. So if you do have those, you can just direct them to me and I can forward them on, or contact the agencies themselves. That would be great. Okay, we have another great question from Sarah, and she's asking, what are the most common reasons and trends for homelessness you have come across for the youth that are in your area specifically?
It's Karen from Bellefaire. Really, we've seen probably the most common is a history of some type of sexual abuse by a family member, or and this child has experienced a great deal of trauma and not been supported through this situation, this abuse that's occurred. So they become estranged from their family, very vulnerable to be preyed on because they are out into the community lacking that sense of belonging and lacking trusting adults in their life. So I would say, unfortunately, a great deal of sexual abuse, and just also the other issue would be poverty. Cleveland has a very large percentage of its families are experiencing poverty, and those teens are just trying to survive, and it's really very overwhelming for them sometimes to even just find food, and they're doing what they can. So helping train people again so that they see that these kids are trying to survive and what their behaviors are really saying.
This is David in Cincinnati. I think we have the predominant thing that we see are environmental concerns within the home, that we have many youth that the guardians will claim they have horrible behaviors, but we take them out of that environment and we put them in the shelter and we find this sweet little teenager. They go back to that environment and it disrupts again until we put services in place and we're able to support that environment. But it's generally for us environments in the home that are the leading cause, and the guardian's inability to work with the youth and change some of those things.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, those are some pretty common trends that we've seen too. It looks like questions are kind of dying down. Like I did say, if you do have any specific questions for me or the other agencies, please just reach out and we can answer answer it that way. But thank you so much again to the panelists. It was really informative. And I know we were so excited to do this webinar, so it was really great hearing from you. Here is my email for anyone joining that does have any questions. And just thank you so much.